Lorenzo Marchetti sat in the back of his bulletproof limo, bored by his own wealth. He was a billionaire in the tech world, but nothing inspired him anymore. Business meetings blurred together, and his penthouse felt like a golden prison. He stared out the tinted window, disconnected from the city that buzzed beneath him. Then, at a red light in a forgotten neighborhood, he saw her, a young woman on the sidewalk, painting feverishly on a broken wall. Her clothes were worn, her hands stained with color, her focus unshakable. For the first time in years, Lorenzo leaned forward and looked closely. She painted as if her life depended on it, because it did. Her name was Camila, and she used old brushes and leftover paints to survive. Each piece she created on that crumbling wall was raw, emotional, and real. Passers-by barely noticed her, but Lorenzo couldn't look away. His driver asked if he was ready to leave, but he said nothing. Something about her expression, determined yet aching, gripped him. He didn't understand it, but he knew he had to see her again. That night, her face haunted his thoughts more than any number ever had. The next day, he canceled 2 meetings and returned to that same street. She was there again, bent over her work, painting under the morning sun. This time, he watched from across the street, pretending to be just another stranger. Camila hummed as she painted, a sound that felt like light in the gray city. Children gathered around her, watching, laughing, learning from her hands. She gave them color in a world that offered so little. Lorenzo felt a strange pull, gentle, powerful, and terrifying. He wasn't used to feeling anything he didn't control. Camila noticed the car more than once, but never saw who was inside. To her, it was just another rich man passing by a forgotten street. She had no time for fantasy. Rent was due, and the gallery had rejected her again. Still, she painted like her soul depended on it. Art was how she processed pain, hunger, hope, and loss. Each mural she left behind was a scream she turned into beauty. She didn't paint for fame. She painted to keep breathing. And that made Lorenzo even more fascinated. On the 5th day, he finally stepped out of the limo. He wore jeans instead of a suit, trying not to scare her off. Camila glanced up, wiping sweat from her brow, suspicious but not unkind. "You're the guy who keeps watching," she said, without stopping her work. Caught off guard, Lorenzo chuckled nervously. "I didn't mean to stare. Your work is incredible." She nodded once, focused on her brush. "If you're not here to buy paint or help, don't block the light." He returned the next morning with coffee and a bag of fresh brushes. Camila hesitated before accepting them, eyeing him cautiously. "I don't need a savior," she said quietly. "I'm not here to save you," he replied. "Maybe I'm the one who needs saving." That made her pause, and for the first time, she really looked at him. There was sadness behind his polished charm, something raw and restless. She didn't trust easily, but something about him felt different. So she let him stay. They began talking between brushstrokes and drying paint. Camila told him about her brother, lost too soon, and how art was all she had left. Lorenzo spoke little at first, unsure how to share his sterile world. But her presence made it easier to be vulnerable. He started telling her about the weight of success, the loneliness of power. She listened, never judging, only nodding with quiet understanding. They came from opposite worlds, but pain was a language they both knew. And slowly, that common pain turned into something tender. Rumors started to swirl when Lorenzo's car was seen parked daily in the slums. His board of directors called it reckless behavior, but he no longer cared about their opinions. Camila was showing him a version of life untouched by greed. She made color from suffering, music from silence. Her laughter was unpolished, real, and it began to heal him. In her small world, he found a sense of peace he couldn't buy, and he wasn't ready to let it go. One evening, she invited him to help her finish a large mural. He laughed at his own terrible painting skills, splashing more than he filled. Camila laughed too, truly and freely, and it echoed through the street. They were covered in paint by the time the wall was done. As they stood back to admire the work, their hands brushed. Neither pulled away. The air between them shifted, quiet and electric. In the fading light, Lorenzo realized he hadn't felt this alive in years. But just as their bond deepened, reality intruded. A tabloid photographer captured them together, and the photo went viral. Camila's quiet world was suddenly on display. Strangers appeared, offering money and contracts, twisting her passion into product. She confronted Lorenzo, hurt and furious. "I didn't ask for this," she cried. "You broke the only safe thing I had." He tried to explain, but the damage had been done. And for the first time, he feared he had lost something he couldn't replace. Camila stopped painting for 3 days. The wall she used every morning remained blank, abandoned. Lorenzo drove by in silence, staring at the emptiness. He had made the mistake of bringing chaos into her fragile world. She didn't answer his calls or messages. Every morning, he sat in his car, hoping she would return. The city felt colder without her colors breathing through it. He missed her more than he thought he ever could. On the 4th day, she appeared at dawn, alone. No brushes, no paint, just her and a torn sketchbook. Lorenzo stepped out of the car, but kept his distance. "I didn't mean to ruin your peace," he said softly. Camila looked at him, eyes tired, voice calm. "You didn't ruin it. I just didn't expect you to bring the whole world with you." "I didn't mean for them to see us," he added. "I know," she whispered, "but they did." They sat in silence on a nearby bench. No crowds, no press, just the early light and their truth. Camila opened her sketchbook and showed him a drawing. It was of him, sitting in the limo, watching her with a longing expression. "I saw you before you ever spoke," she admitted. "I thought you were a ghost of a man trying to remember how to feel." Lorenzo smiled faintly. "Maybe I was. Until you pulled me back to life." They began to rebuild the bond they had formed. This time, Camila set the rules. No cameras, no cars, no chaos. He walked to her now, wearing old shoes and anonymity. They spent afternoons in alleys, rooftops, and under overpasses. They painted together, laughed more, and spoke less. Sometimes love is loud, but theirs was quiet, patient, healing. Lorenzo learned to blend color instead of controlling it. Camila learned to trust someone who had once scared her. But not everyone approved of their connection. Lorenzo's investors grew restless at his absence and disinterest. Tabloids dug into Camila's past, twisting her into a scandal. "She's a gold digger," they wrote. "He's having a breakdown." She tried to ignore it, but the whispers pierced deep. Her work began to shift, darker tones, heavier lines. Lorenzo noticed and asked what he could do. "Protect me by not trying to save me," she replied. Despite the pressure, Camila accepted an invitation to paint at a cultural festival. It was her first paid opportunity, but it came with cameras and expectations. She was terrified, but Lorenzo promised to stay out of sight. The mural was bold, defiant, filled with color and scars. Crowds applauded, critics praised, but her eyes searched for only one face. He waited at the edge of the park, arms crossed, proud and quiet. When she walked to him after, she didn't speak. She just hugged him. He held her tightly, as if shielding her from a world too loud. That night, he took her to a rooftop with a view of the entire city. They laid on a blanket, surrounded by paint supplies and tea. "I used to think silence was loneliness," Lorenzo said. "But with you, it feels like peace." Camila smiled, head resting on his shoulder. "I used to think love meant being rescued. But now I think it means having someone who listens when you're drowning." And in that silence, they understood each other completely. Camila's studio began to grow from a broken room into a living place. Lorenzo helped repair the roof and repaint the walls. No luxury, just labor. She opened the space to children, giving free art lessons on weekends. He handled the logistics but stayed out of the spotlight. They became a quiet force. Her color, his structure. Together, they created something that had never existed in either of their worlds. It wasn't wealth that built it, but shared purpose. And that made it stronger than gold. One day, Camila painted something different. A canvas instead of a wall, a private piece she kept hidden. When Lorenzo asked, she shook her head. "Not yet," she said. "This one's not ready to be seen." He respected that, knowing some things must bloom in darkness first. But deep down, he wondered if it was about him. The distance between them hadn't returned, but neither had the certainty. Something unspoken lingered in the air. That evening, Lorenzo received an urgent call. His company was in crisis. A failed merger, a breach in leadership, he had to return. Camila watched him pack, saying nothing at first. "I don't want you to leave," she finally said. "I'll come back," he promised. "I always come back to you." She nodded, but her eyes said otherwise. He kissed her forehead, holding on to her longer than usual. And as he left, she returned to the canvas she wasn't ready to show. Lorenzo's return to the corporate world was colder than he remembered. Every office felt smaller, every meeting more distant. He answered questions and made decisions, but his heart stayed in that studio. Camila's silence grew heavier with each passing day. They exchanged brief messages, but something had shifted. At night, he stared at the ceiling, wondering if he had waited too long. The city lights outside felt emptier without her colors in them. And he finally understood, success meant nothing if she wasn't part of it. Meanwhile, Camila finished the hidden canvas in solitude. It was raw, tender, and filled with the storm she couldn't put into words. She didn't know if she was painting a goodbye or a hope. Each brushstroke was a memory: laughter, silence, longing, and fear. She missed him, but she feared losing herself again. Love had found her, but it also terrified her. Still, she waited, because deep down, she wanted him to choose her, not just the escape she represented. And that choice had to be his. Lorenzo returned 3 weeks later, tired but certain. He didn't arrive in a limo or with headlines. He simply walked. He found her sitting on the studio floor, covered in paint. When she saw him, she froze, hope and hesitation colliding in her eyes. "I came back," he said softly. "But not just for you." Camila tilted her head, unsure. "I came back for us. For the life we build, not just the life we escape from." And she smiled, finally, because that was the answer she had waited for. She showed him the canvas that same night. It was a portrait of the two of them, unpolished, imperfect, but intimate. Their hands reached for one another, not touching, just close. Between them was a wall half-painted, half-cracked. He stared at it for a long time, deeply moved. "It's us," she whispered. "Always in progress. Always unfinished." He touched the edge of the painting gently. "Then let's never finish it," he replied. "Let's just keep creating." Their life became simpler, but deeper. They woke up to paint instead of deadlines. Sometimes they worked in silence, sometimes in music and laughter. They didn't need perfection, they just needed each other. Lorenzo gave up titles but kept what mattered: presence, purpose, peace. Camila taught more, painted more, and feared less. They found joy in small things: chalk drawings with children, rainy afternoons, shared meals. And love became not a fairy tale, but a ritual of choosing. Years passed, but their rhythm remained. One summer, they painted a massive mural across the side of a school. It showed hands of all colors holding brushes, lighting the sky. The community watched in awe as Lorenzo climbed the scaffold beside her. They laughed, splattered paint on each other, and told stories to the children below. Camila glanced at him, and he smiled with his eyes first. "I never thought love would look like this," she said. He kissed her paint-covered cheek. "I never knew love until you." They never married in a church or signed a paper, but they wore matching bracelets made of old brush handles. Their promise was simple: never stop creating. They built a small art center for underprivileged youth. It was filled with color, warmth, and the sound of possibility. Lorenzo gave lectures on storytelling and reinvention. Camila became a mentor to young artists with cracked voices and brilliant eyes. Together, they were more than a couple, they were a movement. One day, a reporter asked them what their secret was. Camila said, "We didn't fix each other. We accepted each other." Lorenzo added, "And we never stopped showing up, even when it got hard." The article went viral, but they didn't read the comments. Fame had stopped mattering long ago. What mattered was the smell of fresh paint and the feeling of home beside a soul that truly saw you. Their story wasn't clean or glamorous. It was real. And real, they both knew, was far more beautiful. On their 10th anniversary, they returned to the wall where it all began. The old mural had faded, weathered by time. Camila touched the surface, feeling the cracks like old memories. Lorenzo handed her a brush without saying a word. She smiled, dipped it in yellow, and made the first stroke. Then he added blue. They didn't need to speak. The wall would say it all. Love, after all, was just another canvas waiting for brave hands. Their story became legend, not because of money or tragedy, but because it was earned. He had watched her from a limo, drawn by her soul. She had painted to survive, but ended up painting a life. Together, they showed that love can be messy, honest, and worth every risk. They grew older, but never stopped beginning again. In every mural, there was a piece of their journey. And in each other, they found not a perfect ending, but a never-ending creation. Just like love should be.